Hey guys, Doc here. Today I figured I would give a quick little guide on how to play as a Prot Warrior in Wrath of the Lich King Classic. Now, I'm going to be going over a dungeon run that I did and kind of talk about some of the concepts in how to play as a tank and make sure that you're maintaining aggro, doing good damage, and making sure that you're not dying. So the main abilities that we have are Revenge, Shield Slam, Thunderclap, Cleave. Those are our main damage abilities, with the majority of our damage coming from Revenge, actually. At between levels 14 and 60, it's going to be about 50 to 60% of your damage, depending on your procs and crits. But once you get past level 60 and you have Unrelenting Assault, which reduces its cooldown to 1 second, it will be closer to about 80 to 90% of your damage, depending on procs and crits. So one of the things that I want to talk about first is stance dancing. Something that you'll see me do a lot is swap between defensive and battle stance so that I can charge into a pack, get a thunderclap because I have good initial rage, and then swap to defensive stance while I am connecting pulls or about to start DPSing. So in this clip, for example, or at the start of this run rather, you see me swap battle stance, thunderclap, then I'm going to defensive stance, connecting this pull over here. I'm using my taunt, which is a 30-yard range, and you can see that I use my thunderclap once they get into range again to initiate aggro. You can see that I'm also swapping targets quite frequently, spamming my cleave so that I'm getting good aggro. Man, that guy's loud. And using Revenge and Thunderclap a lot. So here's a smaller pack. You can see that I start with a Shield Slam followed by a Thunderclap. Because he was disjointed from the other mobs that pulled, I wanted to make sure that I got good initial aggro on these guys. So you can see that I'm not getting very good revenge procs, and I'm just kind of slowly attacking, letting it work up. Here I pull this middle pack, sort of the same thing as the last pack. Because everybody was pretty close, I start with a Thunderclap. You can see that I'm using, alternating between Revenge and Cleave so that I can get good initial aggro. I kill the guy that I was kind of worried about in that pack, and I pull an extra pack, kind of connecting two pulls without really having to do too much. Utilizing that taunt so that everything is simpler, I guess. Instead of trying to use something like Intercept, which is charge but for our Berserker stance, to try and connect two packs, I would use my taunt. So here's a good example of trying to connect a lot of different packs. So I shoot the guards on the left, taunt the guards on the right, pull everybody in, thunderclap the majority of them. I see one guy didn't get thunderclapped, and that is my revenge target. So as you can see, my thunderclap's on cooldown, making sure it's on cooldown, dumping my rage into cleave, shield slamming, revenging, the works. Struggling to type here. So start this next pack, start with a thunderclap, taunt to connect them both, use my revenge to get aggro on that one guy, accidentally make a mistake here. I should have used challenging shout, honestly, but it ended up not really mattering. Using shield block, spamming revenge. It's seeing some gameplay of how to play as a Prot Warrior in these dungeons helps a lot. I know that I'm not playing pure Prot in this, but this does give you a good visual representation of how you should be playing, in a sense. And if you're looking down here, you can always see that my Thunderclap's on cooldown. I get charmed here, so I absolutely fucking demolish this mage. But also, in this pack, I actually want to rewind this. So I'm doing warrior things here. Initiate with Thunderclap, swap, taunt. I notice my shield block is on cooldown for the next 7 seconds. I know I have a lot of guys on me already, so I pop my shield wall so that I take 60% less damage. It's very good for scenarios where I want to make sure that I'm not taking too much damage and want to utilize my buffs as much as possible. There are a couple of other things to note. At level 20, you'll have an ability called Retaliation, which I have on Control 2 down here. I don't use it very often, but at early levels, what I like to do is, whenever I initiate with my charge like that, if it's off of cooldown, I like to pop it before I go into defensive stance. And whenever you pop Retaliation like that, you'll want to make sure that you don't use your shield block, because Retaliation only works if you are being hit. Here's a good example of what happens when you don't have any mitigation. You see, I get down to 800 HP for a second there, and it's really scary. Very good visual showcase of how not having any mitigation can literally mean life or death. If I hadn't gotten some stamina upgrades before this dungeon from blacksmithing, it would have been pretty crazy. So, you see, I'm connecting this pack. I don't thunderclap those 2 guards, and you notice that the first thing that I do is I run over to them and I press Revenge. So, cleaving, thunderclapping, Revenge. A lot of the same stuff. And if I ever get into a scenario where I can't use my Revenge and I can't use my Thunderclap, I'll use my Shield Slam, even if it's on a multi-pack, just because I want to keep my global cooldown always running. So you can see there that I got hit by that Chain Lightning for 1200 damage. Because we are a warrior, we don't really have a whole lot of mitigation for this kind of stuff, so it is a good idea to make sure that we are interrupting that stuff, stunning it, or at this level I can spell Reflect it, but I actually made a mistake and did not spell Reflect. But yeah, because we don't have very many ways of mitigating spell damage, that makes things like Shield Wall that reduce global damage taken very strong and allows us to survive against casters whenever otherwise we wouldn't. See, we have a lot of mobs here, pressing Thunderclap, Revenge, really just trying to blow people up. And as you can see, really just maximizing the amount of damage that I'm doing. Use my shield block at the start of the pull so that I'm not taking too much, and trying to do a lot of damage. It really helps with initial threats, being able to use your Revenge immediately off the bat, and then also have good rage for the rest of the fight. Because you get 5 rage every time you block, dodge, or parry, and that just allows you to dump rage into cleaves, thunderclap, Revenge, you know, everything. Just constantly using everything. At level 20, we do also have Tactical Mastery, which whenever we swap stances, we get to retain 10 of our rage. This means that because we want to be using charge to initiate, it's just a mobility thing. It's much easier that way. It's no big deal. We'll want to actually use stuff like our battle shout basically in between every single pack, just because we might as well. You can see that I've gotten out. I didn't incorporate this into my habits very early, and you can see that I have a ton of rage. I just dump it all and I don't even do anything. So here's a good example of using retaliation. I'm not popping shield block here, even though it's on cooldown, to get some big damage on these birds. And yeah, you can see over here on the right that I'm even out DPSing this fire mage, which is pretty crazy. Class that is entirely, or is very well known for doing large amounts of damage, is in a group. It's getting out DPS'd by a warrior. Very, very crazy. More of the same, using Revenge, Cleave, Thunderclap to really make sure this is easy. So I noticed my shield block's on cooldown, and I'm like, alright, I have my shield wall off of cooldown, I'll pull this pack, and if I start taking a lot of damage, I will pop my shield wall. I noticed that I didn't really take too much damage. I took a lot at the end because of those two spirits that were punching me, but the pack itself didn't do very much. So I'm like, okay, I don't need to pop it. And instead, I'm going to pop it on this pack. So I pull these rippers, using my Revenge, use Intercept to go to this next pack to connect it, Thunderclap, Shield Block. I'm sure I use my shield. No, I don't use my shield wall here. Well, I guess I was wrong. I thought I would use my shield wall here. But you could see that it's like shield wall, it's still off of cooldown. I could still be using it for something, but and that really shows you the strength of shield block. 40-second cooldown, it basically makes you immortal for 10 seconds. And until you get the talent, it's actually a 1-minute cooldown. Another tool that is very good to use, or a tip rather, whatever you are pulling in a dungeon, is actually using line of sight to your advantage. We can see in this pack, I know that there's some casters here, and I don't want them casting on me at all. So I have this little alcove here that I can hide in, so I run up here, I taunt, and then I run back here so that even if they decide, hey, I want to start casting, they will get interrupted and then they'll have to run up to me. These guys don't do it in particular, but it helps whenever you are in classic dungeons where enemies are much more prone to casting spells. These guys also have a fear, so I'm pulling this pack back to just ensure that we're not getting feared into the other group. I should have taken it a little farther back, but it's not that big of a deal. So you can see that I am really utilizing my cooldowns and managing my rage simply by just changing my targets every so often and spamming Revenge. Use Thunderclap to get initial threat, use Revenge to get damage on this guy, swap my target so that I am cleaving somebody else with Revenge. And yeah, easy does it. So hopefully this helps somebody out with how to play Protection Warrior in a dungeon. Just a visual representation of kind of how you should be playing and how you should be thinking about your abilities. If you have cooldowns, if you never press them, it's like you never learned the ability in the first place. Worst case scenario, if you press it and it does nothing, it's like you never pressed the button at all. It is only a benefit to press stuff like retaliation or shield wall or shield block, especially shield block. You want to be pressing that. So skip ahead here, just because the mage is drinking. So that was a good example of initiating with taunt would have been better than what I had just done. And on single target, once you have the first global that you want to press is either shield slam or sunder once they get within melee range, just because it gives you a lot of initial aggro. See, he's casting polymorph, use line of sight to my advantage. Line of sighting casts is a very good tactic that you should learn as a tank. Just in general, if you ever run up to a pack, taunt it, and then you start running backwards, your group will usually follow with you. They'll notice that you're trying to make certain plays, and in general, they'll not just run their face into the pack unless, well, they're a special kind of person. But yeah, that's the end of the dungeon, the end of the run, and hopefully this helps somebody out, because I like making these videos, I like talking about stuff, and I like helping people out. And Protection Warrior, it is somewhat high APM, and I can understand when it's a little overwhelming to start for the first time. You don't really know all the tips, all the tricks, and it's a little rough to get adjusted to everything, I guess. But anyways, I gotta get back into another dungeon, so hopefully this helped you guys out, and I'll see you in the next one.